Welcome back, guys. Hope you all had a great weekend on your own or with your family, and I hope you all kept safe. Today I wanted to discuss 3 big changes or additions the game needs right now. There is of course plenty of stuff that could be considered here. You could just go on the forums and you'll see at least 15 kind of ideas, but I wanted to focus on 3 things that I think the community has been asking for since inception. Certainly for 2 of the big changes. One of them is an addition which is more recent, and I'd like you to leave your own kind of personal 3 changes in the comments below. If you do want to support me, the best way to do that is just watch the video all the way to the end. You can like, subscribe, all of that good stuff as well. That really does help me out. And with that said, let's get into this. Now, the reason I wanted to focus on some changes and one addition is because TU 11.1 will be coming out, I presume, towards the end of this month, maybe in a couple of weeks. And then we're going to have TU 12 likely coming in December, or maybe a little bit before when Season 3 ends. And I know with TU 12, they're going to obviously be addressing probably some real big kind of core issues with the game. So I wanted to kind of talk about at least one real big kind of core issue. The other one, again, quite a big core issue, and then one addition which they may be able to implement in the near future, although it's unlikely, and you'll see why when I talk about it. So the first change, a big core change or rework you might call it, I think it's armor. Now, I recently saw a video from Gamey Daddy here on YouTube, another great Division content creator. Highly recommend you go check out his stuff. He's really good, and I watch a lot of his videos. They're highly thought out. But he was talking about armor, and whilst the fix for this never kind of left my mind, his video brought it to my attention again, and I really think it needs to be kind of the next topic for discussion. Now, as I said in my last video last week, from my data collecting, I think the rainbow roll issue has kind of now been fixed. I think there's some equality there, and loot quality appears to also be in a good place, and it kind of feels good to move on from that, actually. So I wanted to move on to armor. Now, I think there's going to be plenty of feedback and opinion on how the devs address armor in this game. So again, leave all your comments down below. It would really be great. I guess first off, what's the issue with armor is the question I'm asking. And I guess in the simplest term, armor feels pointless in this game in 2 different ways. So if you're comparing it to the other core attributes, weapon damage and skill tier, invest in the armor attribute, it just feels really underwhelming. Mainly because it doesn't compare to the other 2 core attributes. If you invest into 6 core weapon damage attributes, you get 90% extra damage, and you can really feel the difference when playing the game. The same is true for skill tiers. In fact, 6 skill tiers are what I normally run on my build. Well, actually, I run 5 with Technician, and it destroys on Heroic. You can really see and you can really feel the difference when you're using either a full 6 red core build or full 6 yellow core build. But a full armor core build, it's meh. It's not there at all. It just doesn't compare. If all reds are going to give you kind of a meaningful amount of damage, glass cannon when you consider the talents you can use as well, and then a full yellow is going to give you really strong skills to the point where on Heroic you literally don't have to leave cover or even shoot your gun most of the time, then a full blue core build should make you a tank. But it doesn't. And there's kind of 2 reasons why, and I think the devs have to address either one, to be honest. Firstly, the amount of damage NPCs can inflict in such a short period of time has always been a huge gripe of mine. Not so much when it comes from elites or even veterans really, but red bars. These NPCs, in my opinion, they're way overtuned, and whilst they are easy to take down when you're using a red build, they're not that easy when you're running an all blue build. Veterans become a real problem, really spongy from an all blue build, and elites are just, way too spongy in an all blue build. Now, I've always said red bars need to be the grunts. They go down easily and they do chip damage. And whilst I still think this needs to be the case, this won't fix how underwhelming an all blue build feels, and the only real solution are changes to the armor attribute itself. So if I decided to run an all red build, I get the minimum armor of 726k, and if I then put 6 blue core pieces of gear on, I get upwards of 2 million armor, which is about 3 times the minimum amount you would get, say, on a red build. Now, this sounds like enough on paper, but the issue is the NPCs, even reds. They can do 1.5 million damage or more in a split second. Now, if I'm running a skill build like mine, for example, that's fine because, I spend most of my time in cover hiding behind my skills. For red builds, you could do the same thing, to be honest. But for an all blue build, you're meant to feel like a tank, meaning, you got to break cover, you can tank bullets, but 2 million armor is just nowhere near enough. When you're a tank, you need to be in and around enemies because you're not going to be doing enough damage to, fight them from afar. They will just surround you. So you need to be able to take bullets. That's the whole point of being a tank. And I guess the easiest fix is probably just to triple or even quadruple the armor values on gear so that if you invest in all blues, you're going to actually feel like you can take a lot of damage. Because let's not forget, you're not going to be putting out a whole lot of damage. I would then change how shields work with the cores as well. I understand why the devs decided to allow blue core attributes to act as skill tiers for shields, for their vision of how a tank should work in this game, but I disagree with that totally. I think the shield skill tier should only be affected by skill tiers, like all the other skills in the game. And I think if the devs decided to just increase the armor values on gear drastically, this could work. Now, I have seen some other kind of more elaborate suggestions on a fix here, but I think the devs should try this basic change first and then just go from there. I'll tell you what, I know for sure that I'd actually start to think about building an armor build if they did this. We've got armor regen builds in the game, but that's not the same thing. And health in the game is underwhelming. Of course, there may be some other balancing changes needed to gear if this were to come into effect, so you didn't become invulnerable. But all in all, I really think the devs need to address armor in this game. I don't mind poking my head out on a glass cannon build and getting down to low armor or health as long as it's not a red bar spraying an SMG from 30 meters. And I don't mind the same for my skill build either because I'm not investing any stats in the blue cores. But for an all blue core build, it just seems ridiculous that you go from surviving for 1 second on a red build to surviving for 2 seconds on an all blue build. And just to end this bit, I know the devs want us to use cover, but that shouldn't completely destroy a tank build. Tank builds should bypass the need for constant cover. Tank builds should be able to tank. You should be able to stay alive for 10 seconds or more out of cover with constant damage, because let's not forget, you're not going to be doing a lot of damage. And I really think the devs need to address how the blue cores work in this game. And if they did, then again, I think we're going to see more build diversity, and I think that's a good thing. So moving on to the kind of next change, and nothing makes me more sad than seeing how PvP has turned out in this game. I look at how many days I've played in this game compared to The Division and realise that the huge difference is actually because I spent most of my time playing PvP in The Division, hoping that Marker Blades was not on the opposing team, to be honest. Now, I didn't think PvP in The Division was that great at the time or even now on reflection, but what it really was fun. It was really fun, without a doubt. I remember the days of one-shot seekers and all of that other bad stuff that happened. Even on a couple of those occasions, I remember nearly quitting the game, actually. But at no point was the game not fun, even if it was, at times, a lot of the time, frustrating. The devs here appear to have fixed some of the biggest problems from The Division, like chicken dancing, for example, but in doing so, they've created a PvP environment that it's just completely void of any character. It's void of any fun. You just look at one mechanic like the medkit. Now, I don't know about you, but having to stop and apply the medkit kind of sets the tone for PvP for me. Boring, it's static gameplay, and that doesn't account for the complete and utter imbalance in the game. Every update there's a new broken build or talent. Whoever thought it was a good idea to have a firearm break armor mechanic in PvP, they just need to really consider whether they know how PvP works. There's so many mechanics that punish players for being good at the game. They can never quite get the headshot damage, crit chance and crit damage kind of right. It's always been the case that crit damage and crit chance just surpasses headshot damage, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't make sense that if I'm hitting you in the head constantly and you're hitting me in the body, that I don't win those battles, but that's always been the case. What's become very clear is the devs, they're not going to be investing any more resources into PvP, whether that's new game modes, new Dark Zone, etc. There was a data mine, I won't even say a data mine, but there was a suggestion that we'd be getting a new Dark Zone in New York with maybe Year 3 DLC. I just don't think that's going to happen. I still think they're going to invest in balancing for PvP, but I really think that's about it. And that is a real shame. At this point, though, I don't think PvP in this game can be saved. I think there's far too many variables to balance, and it would take a lot of manpower the devs just don't have, manpower that's likely working on Year 3 DLC, or maybe even a Division 3 if another studio isn't actually working on it. Now, I've added this to the list because PvP, it's been a joke since the game first launched, and nearly 2 years later, it's still very much a joke. There's still very much a lot of problems with it, and they've not done anything with it. There's been no new modes, and there's been nothing new in it for a very long time. In many ways, PvP actually should not be on this list because I don't think it can be fixed. And to be honest, I'd rather the devs invest in the PvE side of things if that's the case. Last but not least, and this is an addition rather than a change or rework, and that is Survival Summit. Now, I know I'm kind of fanboying here and I'm wishing for something that's never going to happen, but I'm going to speak about it anyway. I may make a separate video on this altogether. Now, I don't expect the devs to recreate something similar to The Division in terms of scale here, because I know that's not going to happen, but the Summit has a good core to start making some interesting modes out of, especially when the devs start fleshing it out more, which I believe is where the majority of the attention is right now, where we get windows. I've talked about, completely overhauling the inside of what this mode looks like in terms of what it has inside it. There's a lot of stuff in the open world that you could just take those assets and move into this game mode just to make it more interesting. Now, the good thing about Survival Summit, which is what I'm calling it for this video, is actually all of the core mechanics are there, really. It's just a case of bringing it all together. At least that's how it looks to me. Now, I'm not a game developer, so I don't know for sure, and I'm just talking about what I want. I don't know whether it's something that's possible or not. For starters, they would need to reduce the amount of floors. I think 20, maybe less, but it wouldn't make sense to start from level 1 up to level 20. That's not really a summit. So maybe have a cutscene where you're in a helicopter because it's Ubisoft, and you crash through the windows. I know, guys, windows in a skyscraper, can you believe it? So you crash through windows at, say, level 80 or 85, and in the process, you lose all your stuff. Of course, there are 15 or 20 levels that would need to scale appropriately, but the entire premise is you start with nothing, and you have to pick up all your gear on the way. You could add the element of DC62 into the mode, whereby you're constantly dying, but you have to collect masks on the way which filter out the chemicals in the air. You kind of, even just filters, you keep one mask on and you replace that filter with level 100 containing the antivirals in order to save you. You could have rogue encounters in there as well. The environments would really have to be fleshed out, though, for it not to become a boring game mode again. But with some work, I think this would be an awesome game mode. Survival in a skyscraper. Now, personally, I can think of actually nothing more exciting than a game mode like this in the game. What I've talked about here are, just some of the basics, though, and there would be way more to it than that. But you've got a template from The Division, so bring it in here. Now, I know this is a pipe dream, guys. The devs have already said they've got no plans to bring survival back in The Division 2, and I believe them. This nightmare event coming in December is being speculated as some type of horde mode, maybe zombies or something. So I know the devs are going to be working on this, and I guess this is one of those additions to the game that will, keep coming up as recommendations in forums, but will never make it into the game, and that's a real shame. I hope the devs surprise us. Alright, but that's it for today's video, guys. Thanks very much for watching. I do know that I could have probably added like mods in here, and there's plenty of other stuff I could have added to this list, but I just wanted to kind of do two real kind of changes that I'd like to see, especially PvP. I know they probably won't be able to do it, but I'd like to actually go and play some PvP for once and not get really frustrated and actually enjoy myself, which I've not done since The Division 1, and then 1 Edition, which again is kind of probably not going to happen, but I'd love to see it. Thanks very much for watching. If you are hearing me say this, I really do appreciate it. And until tomorrow's video, where I'll be doing the vendor reset video, of course, Epic out.